What's going on? Alec here at Soulful Guitar Lessons, and today I want to do something a little bit different. I was sitting in bed last night and I couldn't sleep, and I was thinking, what would Jimi Hendrix sound like if he was still around today? Think about that. And we can get into more specifics a little bit later on in the video. To start this off, I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. I grew up listening to Jimi Hendrix. I got on a Jimi Hendrix shirt right now, if you can see it. Whoop. This might date myself a little bit. I used to go to the library and I would grab his CDs. You could rent CDs from the library way back when, before, Kazaa and Spotify and all this stuff. And I would go rent his CDs, and on the way to school, I would spin Are You Experienced and Axe as Bold as Love. I'd never heard anything like it. It was like from outer space. And some of the songs are about aliens from outer space, so I guess that's fitting. Anyways, Jimi Hendrix has been around for about 55 years. Okay, think about that, over half a century. And we all know and love him. We're kind of used to that idea of him playing with fuzz and octave, this iconic sound, right? Right, that fuzzy sound into a Marshall. We got some octave, the octave above. Really iconic, but we're kind of looking at a fossil frozen in time. And he was a pioneer in his day. He was the first one to really take blues into a psychedelic rock territory. In one of his songs, Axe as Bold as Love, Eddie Kramer, his engineer, he makes the claim that it was the first recording to ever use flanger. Now, whether or not he's the very first, it could be debated, but he was pushing the envelope. In the song EXP, he was experimenting with stereo panning.
I don't believe it.
Right? So voices, guitars, all that stuff is going left and right. This wasn't very common at the time. These are cool recording techniques, that he's really a trailblazer and he's trying to push the envelope forward. And I think, to me, that's the biggest thing I take away from Jimi. It's not that he plays with a fuzz pedal or he has an octave pedal on top of that, or, he had a cover from Bob Dylan or kind of any of that. I think of Jimi Hendrix as like a trailblazer and somebody that's wanting to push the envelope and move things forward, right? That's what I take away. So Jimi was a pioneer in his day. Production, songwriting, guitar playing, for sure. He used textures to tell his story, right? He would play sometimes a solo backwards, like Castles Made of Sand. Or he would use flanger or phasers, or he would use doubling on his voice. He would use all these production techniques to tell his story. He wasn't just plugging in a guitar, singing into a mic, and call it a day. Now, fast forward to today, there are literally hundreds of pedal companies, hundreds of guitar companies, everything under the sun, right? There's so much gear out there. And there's a lot of people that I think would want to go backwards and be like, how do we get this Hendrix tone, right? We got to have definitely not a Les Paul, right? You got to have a Strat into your, fuzz pedal, whatever, fuzz face, into a Marshall amp, right? All that type of thing. And I think that thinking is great for like educational purposes, but in this video, I really want to push and say, if he was still around today, what would he have done? How would he have sounded today? And how would he have kept pushing the envelope forward, right? Like, what new techniques or new trails would he have blazed if he continued living? And specifically, what would he have thought of modern gear, like a Helix or a Kemper, that type of thing, some of the digital stuff? In my mind, if I was to make a little guess, I think anything that Jimi would be able to get emotion out of would be fair game. He was not one to say, okay, that's new technology, I don't want to try it, right? He was somebody that's always pushing the envelope forward. So anything that can convey emotion, right, to the listener would be fair game. And I was talking about this with my brother. Emotion is just energy in motion, right? So the energy that's coming through the speakers is hitting the listener. And all that stuff, all that sound, that energy can be achieved through whatever, a Helix, a Line 6, any one of those tools can be used because they're all just tools at the end of the day to convey emotion. Now, if we kept pressing, I bet Jimi might still be using a Strat as his main axe, specifically because he could use that tremolo whammy bar that, Les Pauls don't have. They have Bigsby's, but it's a little different. And if we keep pushing, the Eventide H9 and the Chase Bliss pedals and the hologram and all those pedals have very unique, crazy soundscapes that you can paint textures with. And Hendrix would have definitely gone for all those sounds. I can almost guarantee he wouldn't have stayed in just playing a guitar into a fuzz and wah and univibe straight into an amp, He would have kept pushing the envelope forward. Now let's talk about amp choices. We would think that, he's gonna use a Marshall amp, live because that's what he's always used. And I don't necessarily think that's true. Because while tone and feel are important, emotion trumps everything, right? And Jimi the reason I love him is that he is, in my opinion, the most emotional guitar player to have ever lived. And he could take any guitar. A lot of his guitars and his solos were out of tune, right? Slightly out of tune, but it didn't matter, because it conveyed an emotion. And the listeners, we all feel it. And so whether it would be a digital Kemper or a Marshall, whatever, it doesn't matter, as long as the emotion is there. And so you're probably asking, okay, why speculate on these type of things? And I think my answer to that is, as guitar players, we're often looking backwards. We're often looking to the past as some type of holy grail of tone or feel, and I think that's all important. Jimi Hendrix was certainly one of the greatest guitar players to have ever lived. But I think it's important as musicians, guitar players, songwriters, producers, to look forward and use tools that haven't been used before. And rather than be stuck in some type of frozen capsule in time, saying, Jimi only used a Strat and a Marshall, so that's what I'm gonna use. I think it's ignoring the type of person Jimi was. And Jimi was a forward thinker, right? He was a pioneer. That's why I want to do this series, is to push everyone to pioneer and blaze trails and keep going. And don't be because Jimi Hendrix did this or Stevie Ray Vaughan did that or Eric Clapton did that you have to do that as well, right? Part of the reason I love playing Les Pauls is because Jimi didn't play Les Paul. And I've listened to so much Jimi that I feel like every time I pick up a Strat, I end up playing like him. So it's fun to play a different style of guitar just to separate myself sonically from him. And so to everyone watching, I just want to inspire you and keep pushing forward rather than looking backwards. It's important to learn our history, but it's also important to blaze trails and learn new sounds. So thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys soon. Take care. Bye.